Hi, I'm Maya, and I'm 29. And when I was 17, my parents drained my entire college fund. Not because they were struggling. Not because we had an emergency. They used the money to buy my brother a brand new BMW convertible. Let that sink in for a second. My future, the thing I'd worked toward for years, was traded for leather seats and a shiny hood ornament. For a kid who barely passed his classes and crashed the last car they gave him. And the worst part? They didn't even tell me. I came home from school one afternoon, and there it was in the driveway. Big red ribbon. Champagne glasses clinking. My mom actually cried. And my dad? He said, "We just wanted to reward Jake. He's been working hard." Working hard at what? Getting suspended? I was in shock. I asked them how they could afford it, and my dad looked me in the eye and said, "We borrowed a portion from your college fund." Borrowed. That was the word he used. I checked the account that night. It was empty. Gone. I sat on the edge of my bed for hours, just frozen. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even tell anyone. Not at first, because somewhere deep down I still wanted to believe they'd fix it. That this was some sort of mistake. But they didn't fix it. They just moved on. My brother crashed that BMW 6 months later, by the way, driving drunk. They paid to fix it like it was no big deal. And me? I was riding the city bus in winter, juggling 2 part-time jobs and eating instant noodles in a dorm I barely afforded with financial aid. That was the moment everything in me shifted. I made a promise to myself that night. They could take the fund. They could hand my future to someone else. But I would still build something so big, they couldn't ignore me forever. And I meant it. Before I keep going, I'd really love to know where you're watching this from. Drop your city or country in the comments. And if this story already has you hooked, hit that subscribe button and stick around. Okay, so fast forward. I worked my way through community college first. No dorms. No parties. No help. I worked nights at a diner, then mornings at a tutoring center. Barely slept. Drank too much coffee. And I kept every receipt, every grade, every tiny win, like proof that I was still worth something. I transferred to a 4-year university after 2 years. I got a scholarship, lived in a shared apartment with no heat, still working, still grinding, still trying to pretend like I wasn't angry all the time. Meanwhile, my brother dropped out of college, said it wasn't a vibe. My parents made excuses for him. He's just figuring it out. He's got a lot on his plate. I had more on mine, but no one ever asked how I was doing. By 22, I had my degree. I graduated with honors. No family at the ceremony. By 23, I was investing small, laundromats, tutoring businesses, anything I could afford. And then I saw it. A news article, buried online. A private university, the same one my dad worshipped growing up, was drowning in debt. Enrollment was down. Their endowment was collapsing. The board was desperate. And I knew exactly what to do. Because for years, I'd been preparing for this. I'd built an LLC. I had capital. I had a plan. I contacted the university using a business alias, not Maya Bennett, daughter of the people who called her dramatic. I offered them a lifeline. And they took it. I became one of their largest minority shareholders at 24. And by 26, I owned a 31% stake in the school my parents told me I'd never get into. I didn't tell them. Not then. I just watched. I didn't say anything to them. Not about the money. Not about the car. Not about how it felt to have my future handed to someone else like it was nothing. I just got quiet. But inside, I was on fire. Because something shifted that day. I stopped trying to be the good daughter. I stopped hoping they'd notice. And I started planning. Not revenge, not yet. But survival. Real, stubborn, scrappy survival. I signed up for community college. The only one I could afford with the leftover federal aid and a few local scholarships I'd won in high school. Ones they didn't even know I'd applied for. I lived at home for a while because I had no other choice. But every time I walked past that BMW in the driveway, I swear it laughed at me. My brother? He barely even acknowledged me. He was too busy posting Instagram stories from parties and crashing at his girlfriend's house. Meanwhile, I was waking up at 5 a.m. to catch the bus, taking classes all day, working at a diner at night, and doing homework during my breaks. I didn't complain. Because complaining wouldn't bring the money back. And I sure as hell wasn't about to ask them for anything. They made it clear who mattered in that house. And it wasn't me. During those 2 years, I didn't have a social life. I didn't have weekends. I didn't even have proper meals half the time. But I had a spreadsheet on my laptop called The Long Game. It tracked every dollar I earned, every class I aced, every opportunity one could maybe, someday, turn into something bigger. I remember one night, I was closing up the diner, still wearing my grease-stained apron, and I saw a couple walk in. Dad in a suit, mom in pearls, their kid wearing a St. Andrew's hoodie. And it just broke me for a second, because that could have been me. That was supposed to be me. I went home that night and cried in the shower for an hour. Then I dried off, opened my laptop, and updated my spreadsheet. Because if no one was going to fight for my future, I'd have to fight for it myself. By the time I finished my associate degree, I'd already applied to every four-year university that offered scholarships for transfer students. I got into 3. And you better believe I chose the one that gave me the biggest check. It wasn't a fancy school. It wasn't St. Andrews. But it was mine. And I was going to make it work. I moved to the city with nothing but 2 suitcases, a second-hand laptop, and a folder full of dreams I didn't tell anyone about. I slept on a friend's couch for the first 2 months. I worked weekends at a tutoring center and evenings doing data entry for a temp agency. And during the day, I went to class. I graduated with honors. Nobody from my family showed up. No cards, no phone calls, not even a text. They didn't even know I was graduating. I remember walking across that stage, hearing my name echo through the auditorium, and looking up into a crowd full of strangers. And I realized something. I didn't miss them anymore. I missed the version of them I wished existed. So after graduation, I got to work. Not just at a job. I mean work. I started flipping small assets. A laundromat that was about to close? I turned it around with better marketing and a loyalty app. A failing tutoring business? I restructured it, built an online model, and sold it for a profit. I wasn't rich. Not yet. But I was moving, learning, studying business on my own terms. Watching YouTube lectures, listening to finance podcasts while folding laundry, reading everything I could about investing, equity, and how to make my money grow. My parents thought I was just doing freelance stuff. They had no clue I was building something, because I didn't want them to know. Not yet. And then, I saw the article. Buried deep in some business blog. St. Andrews faces financial crisis. Endowment shrinks, enrollment declines. I remember staring at my screen, not blinking. It was like fate handed me the moment I'd been preparing for. That school, the one my father bragged about nonstop, the one he said I wasn't good enough for, was failing. And I had the money to help save it. On my terms. So I called. Not as Maya. As Ms. Sinclair, a consultant representing a small but strategic private firm. I pitched a recovery strategy. Offered a significant investment in exchange for long-term equity and operational influence. They took the meeting. And within 2 weeks, I was in. Not a student. Not an applicant. A stakeholder. I bought my seat at the table they once told me I didn't belong at. I didn't tell anyone. Not my friends. Not my old professors. Definitely not my parents. I just let it happen quietly. I wasn't doing this for applause. I was doing it for her. The 17-year-old version of me who had to smile while her family celebrated her brother with her college fund. I'd love to say I felt powerful right away, but honestly, I just felt calm. Like something had finally clicked into place. And I knew this was just the beginning. So yeah. At 24, I became a stakeholder in the one university my parents used to worship like a shrine. The same one they told me wasn't for girls like me. Too expensive, too elite, too everything. And now, I was one of the reasons it was still standing. Not through a grant, not with a donation, but through ownership. My LLC held a 31% stake after the restructure, which meant legally, I had voting rights, power, influence. My name wasn't on any brochures. Not yet. But behind the scenes, I was changing the game. At first, I kept it quiet. No Instagram posts. No family emails. No I told you so's. I didn't want noise. I wanted results. Because the real flex was building quietly while everyone still thought you were struggling. My dad still bragged about St. Andrews at family dinners. He'd say things like, if Jake had stuck it out there, he'd be running a company by now. My mom would nod, like that wasn't the same school they told me I wasn't ready for. They didn't even know I'd been in the board meetings. They didn't know the new dean's office. I'd signed the renovation approval. They didn't know the scholarship program for underserved students. That was my doing. They didn't know that every week, Decisions were being made on their dream campus, and I was in the room. Not with them. Above them. Jake, still floating. He'd started 2 failed businesses, borrowed money from half the family, and was living in a condo our parents helped him rent. They still called him a risk taker. They still called me distant. But I was done needing their praise. Because I finally understood something. They weren't going to see me. Not really. Not unless I made it unavoidable. So I did something bold. I said yes to a speaking event. The university had this annual Women in Finance panel, donors, board members, alumni. And this year, they asked me to be on it. At first, I hesitated. I didn't want to be the face. I liked being the ghost in the system, the silent force. But then I thought about the girl I used to be, standing in front of the mirror, holding fake speeches, wondering if anyone would ever listen. And I said yes. I walked into that auditorium in a black suit and low heels. Hair pulled back, no name tag. Most of the audience didn't recognize me. But the ones who did? They stared like they'd seen a ghost. Because I didn't look like the version of Maya they remembered. I looked like someone who knew exactly who she was. And for once, I did. I sat on that stage next to CEOs and financial analysts. I spoke about value systems, risk, and long-term vision. But what I was really speaking about, resilience. After the panel, one of the professors came up to me and said, "I remember reviewing your transfer application years ago. You weren't admitted." I smiled and said, "Well, I transferred myself back in, just took a different route." He laughed, but I wasn't joking. Jake found out through Instagram. One of his old friends had posted a photo of me on the panel. He sent me a message that night. "Wait, you were at St. Andrews?" I left it on read, because I didn't owe him a single word. And I was still waiting for the first congratulations that never came. But the truth? I didn't need it anymore. Their praise, their understanding, their permission. Because somewhere along the way, I stopped building to prove them wrong, and started building to prove me right. I was paying my own team now, 12 employees, health benefits, remote flexibility. I was mentoring other first-gen women in business, and reinvesting in the very community my family told me to escape from. That was power. Not the kind that screams in rooms. The kind that rewrites the blueprint. People always assume that when you come from a broken family, success is about revenge. But that's not always true. Sometimes, success is about creating the life you needed when you were 17. The life no one built for you. The life no one believed you could have. I remember standing in front of the new campus library one night. It was quiet. Snow was falling. And I looked up at the brick facade and whispered to myself, "They gave him the car. I gave myself the empire." And that's when I knew I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was winning. Not because I had more money. Not because I got my name on some wall. But because I was no longer waiting to be chosen. I'd already chosen me. After the panel, I didn't go home right away. I walked the campus. Past the quad, past the admissions building, past the old brick staircase where I used to sit as a teenager, dreaming about being here. Except now, I was part of the reason it still existed. And I didn't feel pride exactly. Not yet. What I felt was distance. Like the version of me who once begged to belong here. She was still watching. She was still watching. But I was someone else now. And I realized something in that moment. This whole time, I thought I wanted revenge. What I really wanted was to become undeniable. And I had. I didn't hear from my parents after the panel. Not even a call. Not even a message. They'd definitely seen the photo. Jake saw it. Jake sent a thumbs up emoji. That was it. That was the entire family reaction to the fact that I'd just spoken at a university they used to worship. A place I wasn't good enough for. A place they never helped me reach. A place I now own 31% of. It should have hurt, but instead, it just confirmed what I already knew. They were never gonna celebrate me. Not when they couldn't take credit for it. A few weeks later, I got a call from a contact on the board. They were restructuring another department. He asked if I wanted to vote on it personally. I said yes, because I wanted to sit in the same boardroom where a decade earlier, people like me weren't even considered. And when I did, it felt quiet, not triumphant, not cinematic, just solid. Like standing on concrete after years of walking on ice. That same week, I was invited to a private donor dinner. Nothing fancy, just wine and salmon and uncomfortable small talk. But halfway through the night, someone asked about my family. "What do your parents think of what you've built?" I smiled. And I said, "They don't know." He looked confused. I said it again. "They don't know. And that's okay, because I didn't build this for them. He nodded, slowly. Then he said something I'll never forget. You built legacy without inheritance. That's rare. And yeah, it is. My legacy didn't come from a name, or a trust fund, or connections at the country club. It came from babysitting kids after school to save $60 for textbooks. It came from eating peanut butter sandwiches for dinner for months. It came from sleeping in my car between shifts because I couldn't afford rent. It came from rejection, from silence, from knowing I'd never be the favorite, so I might as well become unstoppable. That summer, I bought a house. My name on the deed. No cosigner. No cosign. 3 bedrooms. Big kitchen. Quiet neighborhood. I invited no one to see it. No housewarming. No tour on social media. Just me, lighting a candle in the kitchen, standing barefoot in the middle of everything I'd built. And you know what? I didn't cry. I didn't even smile. I just whispered, you did it. Because sometimes, that's all you need. Not a crowd. Not a cheer. Just you, knowing. My mom texted me the next day. We haven't heard from you in a while. Are you okay? I stared at that message for a long time. Because for the first time ever, I didn't feel guilty for the silence. I wasn't avoiding her out of shame anymore. I was protecting my peace. I didn't respond. Because I wasn't okay. I was better. And I didn't owe her that explanation. Not anymore. My whole life, I thought healing meant we'd sit down someday. They'd say sorry. They'd finally see me. But healing isn't a family reunion. It's a decision. It's choosing to live, even when they never apologize. Especially when they never apologize. A friend once asked me, if they called you tomorrow and said they were proud of you, would it change anything? And I said no, because I already did the hardest part. I stopped waiting. And the day I stopped waiting, I got my power back. I used to imagine what I'd say if I ever had the stage. If I ever had the mic. If I ever had their attention. And now that I do, I don't want to say anything to them. I want to say something to you. To the person watching this. Because maybe your family didn't support you. Maybe they dismissed you. Maybe they gave everything to someone else while you struggled in silence. I want you to know something. You're not invisible. And your value doesn't decrease just because they refuse to see it. Build anyway. Grow anyway. Win anyway. Because one day, you'll walk into the room they said you didn't belong in. And you won't need to prove anything. You'll just walk in, like you own it. Because you do. It started with a phone call. I hadn't spoken to my dad in months. But out of nowhere, his name popped up on my screen. Middle of a Thursday. No warning. Just calling. My stomach dropped. Because I already knew what this was. I didn't pick up. Let it go to voicemail. 5 minutes later, he texted me. Call me. Your brother's in trouble again. Of course he was. And of course, now that something had gone wrong, suddenly I was useful again. Not for who I am, but for what I could fix. I called back, not because I felt obligated, but because I was curious. I wanted to hear how they'd spin it this time. My dad picked up and went straight into it. No, how are you? No small talk. Jake had borrowed money, made some bad investments, owed a guy more than he could repay. And now, he needed help. Guess who they thought could step in? Me. I let him finish. Then I said, I can't do that. He went quiet, like stunned, because I'd never said no before, ever. There was always a part of me, even when I was angry, that wanted to be the bigger person, to be seen as responsible, kind, helpful, the good daughter. But this time, I didn't feel like giving them that version of me anymore. My dad said, we're family. I paused, took a deep breath, and then I said something I'd never said before. I know you think that means something, but it doesn't mean what you want it to mean. He got mad, tried to guilt me, said I was selfish, said Jake would have helped me if the roles were reversed. And I almost laughed, because no, he wouldn't have, and we both knew it. I hung up calmly. No screaming. No fight. I just ended it. Then I put my phone down and sat on my couch in total silence. And for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't feel guilty. Not even a little. Because protecting your peace is not the same thing as being cruel. It's self-respect. And I was finally learning how to have some. Too focused on money. Disconnected from family. And I realized something so important. Some people will never be proud of you, not because you did anything wrong, but because your growth reminds them of everything they refused to do. Let them lie. Let them sulk. Let them sit in the stories they made up to protect their egos. Because me? I was busy writing a real story. No apologies. No permission slips. Just truth. I lit a candle that night, opened a bottle of wine, and raised a glass to the girl I used to be. The one who begged to be seen. The one who bent herself into pieces to fit inside someone else's idea of good. The one who kept smiling even when she was being erased. I raised a glass to her, because she was gone now. And in her place was me. Whole, unapologetic, unbreakable. It's funny. For years, I imagined what it would feel like when they finally knew. When my parents, my brother, my whole family realized what I'd built. I thought it would be this giant moment, like fireworks. Like they'd call me crying. Like there would be this emotional movie ending scene where everything got fixed. But the truth? It was silent. Just awkward text, weird energy in the family group chat, passive-aggressive comments. No apology. No real acknowledgement. Just more of the same. Only now, I wasn't begging for their approval. Now I was just done. Jake tried to call again. I didn't answer. Not because I hate him, but because I don't trust him. And you can love someone and still choose not to let them back into your life. Especially when every time you open the door, they bring the same storm with them. But I wasn't angry. Not anymore. The anger burned out years ago. Now, I just felt tired of pretending. Of acting like we were all still playing the same game when I'd left the field a long time ago. One night, I found myself doing something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out this old box from the back of my closet. Inside were notebooks, pictures, college rejection letters, printed emails from when I was applying to scholarships, stuff I'd kept for no reason. At the very bottom, there was a folder labeled College Plan, in my handwriting. Inside it, a picture of St. Andrews, a list of dream goals, and at the back, a note I'd written at 17. It said, "Someday I'll matter." I don't even remember writing that, but reading it now, it hit me. Because that girl, the one who wrote that line, she didn't just want success. She wanted to feel like she belonged in her own life, like her existence mattered to someone, anyone. I sat on my floor with that note in my hand and whispered out loud, "You do matter." And I swear, for the first time in years, I felt like I was talking to myself and hearing it back. That's what healing is. It's not always some big forgiveness moment. It's not always about confronting the people who hurt you. Sometimes, it's just about going back for the version of you that had nothing, and telling her she was right to keep going. That night, I wrote her a letter. Just me and the quiet. And this is what I wrote. "Dear 17-year-old me, you made it. You did the hard thing. You took the pain, the silence, the betrayal, and you built something beautiful out of it. You didn't just prove them wrong. You proved you right. And even though they never said they were proud of you, you didn't stop. Even though they used your savings, ignored your achievements, forgot your name at dinners, you still rose. You were never too much. You were never dramatic. You were just real. And that scared them. But that doesn't make you wrong. Thank you for surviving. I see you now. And I will never, ever forget you again. Love, me." I folded the letter, put it back in the folder, and tucked it back in the box, not to hide it, but to honor it. Because that story isn't shameful anymore. It's sacred. It's mine. A week later, I went back to campus. Not for a meeting, not for a panel, just to walk. I sat on the same bench I used to stare at in photos. Watched students walk by, laughing, rushing to class, wearing St. Andrews hoodies with no idea what it took to be here. And I smiled, because I no longer needed to prove I belonged here. I owned part of it. I helped rebuild it. I turned my story into structure, my wounds into windows. And even if they never thank me, I know what I did. I know who I became. And that's enough. Sometimes, the people who hurt you don't realize what they've done until years later, if ever. But your healing can't wait for their realization. You have to choose peace. Even if they stay broken, you have to write your ending. Even if they never apologize. And you have to move forward. Even if they're still standing in the past. That's where I was now. Not angry. Not vengeful. Just forward. And it felt really good. They invited me to dinner. It was my mom's idea. She sent a text that said, "We're having dinner Sunday. Just us. No pressure. Would love to see you." At first, I stared at it and laughed. Because, after everything, after years of silence, gaslighting, watching me struggle while they cheered for someone else, now they wanted dinner? I almost deleted the message. But I didn't. Because something in me, not the angry part, not the vengeful part, but the part of me that was healed enough to handle it, that part said, "Go. Go not for them. Go for you. Go to see how much you've grown. So I said yes. The restaurant was quiet, neutral, public, safe. They were already there when I arrived. My mom stood up to hug me. My dad gave a stiff nod, like he was doing me a favor just by showing up. I sat down across from them and ordered water. Small talk started. How's work? How's the city? Are you dating anyone? I answered, short and polite. Then the table went quiet, and my mom said, we saw the article. No need to explain. I knew which one. My dad added, a lot of people have. It's been going around. I just nodded. Didn't offer more. Didn't downplay it. Didn't fill the silence. I let it hang there. And then she said it. We didn't realize what you were doing. You've built a lot. I took a sip of water. Then I looked at them and said, yeah, I have. My dad cleared his throat like he was preparing to defend himself. He said, we were just trying to do what was right at the time. I nodded again. I know. You thought Jake needed more. That I'd be fine without help. He leaned back, said nothing. My mom reached for her glass. Her hands were shaking just slightly. We didn't mean to make you feel forgotten, she said. And that was the moment, right there. Because she still didn't say, we forgot you. She said, we didn't mean to make you feel. As if the problem was how I interpreted it, not what actually happened. So I took a breath, calm, even. And I said, you didn't make me feel forgotten. You just forgot me. My mom looked down. My dad's face hardened, arms crossed. There it was. The posture of defense. The wall that goes up when accountability tries to come through the door. He said, you've always been so sensitive. Always taking things the wrong way. And in that moment, I remembered every single time he used that word. Sensitive. Like it was an insult. Like it meant I didn't have a right to be hurt. But now? I wasn't a teenager anymore. I wasn't fragile. I was solid. And I looked him in the eyes and said, I'm not sensitive. I just stopped pretending things didn't hurt. He didn't know what to do with that. So he just sat there. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. Inside was a photo of the library at St. Andrews. The one they renamed after me. I slid it across the table. No words. Just that. He picked it up, flipped it open. There was a formal letter from the university board. A thank you note. A certificate with my name on it in gold. My mom blinked hard like she was trying not to cry. My dad read every word. Then he said nothing. Not congratulations. Not wow. Just nothing. So I stood up, calm, quiet. And I said, I didn't come here for an apology. I grabbed my coat. I came here so you could see me. My mom whispered, we were doing our best. And at the door, I paused and said the last thing I'll probably ever say to them in person. Then your best wasn't good enough. I walked out. And I didn't look back. That night, I sat on my balcony. The sky was dark. The city lights were soft. I was barefoot in an oversized sweater, holding a mug of tea. And I realized something big. That dinner? It wasn't for closure. It was for confirmation. I didn't need them to validate anything. I just needed to see face to face that the girl they once ignored no longer needed their attention to feel real. I used to believe that healing came when they finally apologized. But it doesn't. Healing came when I walked out of that restaurant and didn't feel small. Healing came when their silence didn't break me. Healing came when I said the truth out loud and didn't flinch. The girl I used to be would have replayed that dinner 100 times. Wondered if she said too much. If she should have softened the blow. But me now? I slept like a rock. Because I had nothing left to prove. And everything left to live. The group chat lit up 3 days after the dinner. I didn't check it at first. But my cousin Rachel texted me separately. She said, just a heads up, things are getting weird. So I opened it. And there it was. A full play-by-play version of the dinner, told from my mom's point of view. She said I was cold. That I had come in with an attitude. That I embarrassed them. No mention of what actually happened. No mention of the truth I spoke. No context. Just damage control. To the rest of the family, I was suddenly difficult. Ungrateful. Arrogant. The girl who got too successful and let it go to her head. It would have crushed me a few years ago. But now? I just stared at the messages and laughed. Because of course they'd rewrite the story. They always did. They had to. The truth made them uncomfortable. And uncomfortable people will always reach for control. Jake texted me a day later. Hey, I heard what happened. Just letting you know I don't think you did anything wrong. I didn't answer. Because he didn't speak up in the group. He didn't defend me when it mattered. And I'm done collecting crumbs from people who only support me in private. The wildest part? I didn't feel mad. I just felt detached. Like I was watching my old life from behind a glass wall. Like I'd stepped out of the role I was cast in, and now they were mad the understudy wasn't showing up. They missed the version of me that said yes to everything, that never corrected them, that laughed off the pain and stayed small so no one else had to feel insecure. But she's gone, and I'm not shrinking to make anyone comfortable ever again. Still, the comments got to me. Not the loud ones, the quiet ones. The cousins who suddenly stopped liking my posts. The aunts who started telling people I think I'm better than the rest of us now. I never said that. I've never even felt that. All I ever did was survive the fire they left me in. And instead of being proud of me for escaping, they're mad I didn't stay to burn with them. It's wild how people expect you to be humble about things they would have bragged about for years if they had done it. I didn't even announce anything. They found out through a magazine article and still made it about themselves. They couldn't celebrate me because they weren't the reason it happened. And when people can't control your success, they try to control the narrative around it. But here's the thing. You don't owe them your silence just because they're uncomfortable with your truth. And you don't have to apologize for growing in the direction they refuse to water. So I didn't defend myself. Not in the chat. Not in DMs. Not through mutuals. I just let the story unfold. Because people who want to misunderstand you will. And people who truly know your heart, they don't need an explanation. Rachel messaged me again. She said, "You're the first person in our family to break the cycle." That scares people. She wasn't wrong. I'm the first to say no. The first to leave the table. The first to build something without asking for permission. And when you're the first, you become the threat. Because your existence proves it could have been different all along. I started getting messages from people I didn't even know that well. Old classmates. Former coworkers. Friends of friends. They said things like, "I saw your name in that article. Just wanted to say, thank you. I didn't know someone like us could do that. Someone like us." And I realized this story was never just mine. It was bigger than me. It was for every girl who got left out of the will. Every daughter who got told to be quiet while her brother was praised for existing. Every woman who was told she was too much, too ambitious, too loud, too angry. This story was proof that we don't have to stay small just because someone else can't handle our light. So I started sharing more. Not for attention, but for the girl out there who's still sitting in her bedroom, staring at an empty savings account, wondering how she's ever gonna make it. I wanted her to see what's possible. To know that you don't need a perfect family or a head start or someone clapping for you in the front row. You just need grit and a plan. And the audacity to believe in yourself even when no one else does. They're still talking, by the way. My parents. My aunts. The cousins who whisper instead of text. But now, they're just noise. Because I have peace. And peace is louder than approval. One night, I was sitting on my couch with a candle burning, writing in a notebook, and I had this moment. This realization. I'm no longer building to prove anything. I'm building because it's who I am now. A creator. A strategist. A builder. And nothing they say in a group chat can take that away from me. They say I've changed. I say, thank you. That was the point. It happened on a random Tuesday. I was cleaning out my closet, going through boxes I hadn't touched in years. And I found it. The binder. Old. Beat up. A little dusty. The one I made when I was 17. With college plan written across the front in pink marker. Inside were schedules. College rankings. A budget. Pages and pages of notes from a girl who believed so hard that hard work would be enough. And then, I found the page. A single quote I'd written on the back cover in red ink. Someday I'll matter. I didn't even remember writing that. But seeing it now, it cracked something open in me. Because that version of me, that teenager with the binder and the broken heart, she never got closure. She just kept going. And I'd never once gone back to tell her, "You made it." So I sat down on the floor, legs crossed, the binder in my lap. And I wrote her a letter. Not for content. Not to post. Just for her. Just for me. Here's what it said. "Dear 17-year-old me, I know you're hurting right now. I know it feels like the people who were supposed to protect you have turned their backs. I know you're sitting in your room pretending to be okay, while inside you're screaming, wondering why no one sees you. But I need you to know something. You make it. You don't just survive. You rise. You become everything they said you couldn't be, and more. I know you feel invisible right now. I know you feel like the backup plan. The afterthought. The one who always comes second. But you're not. You're the blueprint. You're the beginning of something they'll never understand. And all those tears? They become power. All those nights you stayed up studying, hoping someone would notice? They become the foundation of a future that's built by your own two hands. You're not too sensitive. You're not too serious. You're not too much. You're just ahead of your time. And one day, you'll stop trying to earn love from people who only know how to take. And you'll start loving yourself in a way that feels like freedom. Thank you for not giving up. I promise, it gets better. Love. You. I folded the letter and put it in the binder, closed the cover, held it in my lap like something sacred. Because it was. Not just a notebook, but a memory of the girl who kept me alive when everything in me wanted to disappear. And for the first time in my life, I said out loud, I forgive you. Not to my parents. Not to Jake. To myself. For all the years I stayed silent. For the times I said it's fine when it wasn't. For the way I blamed myself for not being what they needed. I let it all go. People think healing is about fixing relationships. But most of the time, healing is about fixing your relationship with yourself. And that starts when you go back for the version of you that had nothing, and give her the love she never received. That night, I walked through my apartment slowly, just taking it in. The plants, the books, the warmth, the softness of a space I created from the ashes. No one handed this life to me. I earned it. I protected it. I fought for it. And now, I live in it, not with shame, but with pride. The next morning, I woke up and didn't reach for my phone right away. I just sat in the stillness and let myself feel proud. That's something no one tells you when you grow up in a house that only celebrates one child. You have to learn how to clap for yourself. You have to become your own cheerleader, your own advocate, your own witness. And when you finally do, you stop craving their applause, because your voice is loud enough now. Later that week, I passed by a school, not a college, just a local high school, and saw a girl sitting on the steps with a binder in her lap. She looked stressed, tired, hopeful, and I wanted so badly to walk up to her and say, I was you. But I didn't interrupt, because sometimes, what we need isn't someone to tell us it'll be okay. What we need is proof. Proof that someone like us made it. And I think she saw that in me even just for a second, because when our eyes met, she smiled, and I smiled back. This part of the journey? It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about validation. It was about making peace with the girl who never got a chance to rest. And now? She can. Because I've got her. I've got me. I didn't plan on going back. But a few months after I wrote that letter to my younger self, an invitation came in the mail. From St. Andrews. They were hosting a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the new library. The one they named after me. The Bennett Learning Center. They wanted me to say a few words. At first, I almost said no. Not because I wasn't honored, I was. But because I wasn't sure if I needed it anymore. I'd already said what I needed to say. To my parents, to myself, to the world. But then I remembered something. There's a difference between doing something to prove you belong, and doing something because you already know you do. So I said yes. The ceremony was on a cool fall morning. Crisp air, gold leaves, the kind of day that feels like a clean slate. I stood outside the library in a simple black coat, no flashy jewelry, no cameras following me around. Just me. And a small crowd of faculty, students, and people who had no idea what it took for me to stand there. The dean gave a short speech. Then it was my turn. I walked up to the podium, looked out at the campus that used to be a locked door, took a breath, and I said this. I wasn't supposed to be here. Not according to the system. Not according to my family. Not even according to this university. Back when I applied, some people laughed. A few looked nervous. I kept going. But life has a funny way of bringing you back to the places you were once denied. Not for revenge, but for redemption. I paused. Then I said, I grew up being told there wasn't enough, that I was too much, that my dreams were too expensive, too unrealistic, too big. And for a long time, I believed them. Until I realized I could build something bigger than their limitations. I looked up, right at the students standing near the back. You don't have to come from privilege to create legacy. Sometimes, you just need enough pain to fuel the vision and the audacity to follow it through. I didn't inherit this place. I earned it. And now? I'm investing in every student who was told they didn't belong. I stepped back from the mic, and I swear in that moment, I felt 17-year-old me standing beside me, smiling. We'd done it. Together. After the ceremony, a student came up to me. She looked nervous, said she was the daughter of immigrants, said she worked 3 jobs, said she'd seen my name online and didn't think someone like me would ever come here, let alone own part of it. She said, "I just wanted to say thank you. You made me feel like it's possible." And I told her the truth. It is. That's it. 2 words. It is. Because that's what this was really about. Not the name on the building. Not the article. Not the shares. It was about the ripple. The impact. The next girl. The next Maya. The one who still cries herself to sleep at night, thinking she has to fight for scraps just to exist. I built this so she wouldn't have to. I walked back to my car alone, took one last look at the building, and smiled. Not because I needed to be seen, but because I finally saw myself fully. That night, I lit a candle, put my phone on silent, sat on my couch with no music, no TV, no distractions, just me, and the life I built from nothing. And I said out loud, "You did it." Not in a flashy way, just soft, real, like a secret I'd been keeping for years. And now I was finally ready to let it echo. This isn't a revenge story. It's a rebirth story. A story about choosing yourself, about unlearning shame, about building something sacred in the dark without applause. And when the light finally comes, you don't need them to clap. You're already whole. So if you're still listening, and you've ever been the forgotten one, the quiet one, the one who worked twice as hard for half the credit, let this be your sign. You're not broken. You're not behind. You're not too late. You're becoming. And one day, they'll wonder how you did it. But by then, you won't need to explain a thing. You'll just smile. Because you already know. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. And remember, sometimes the family we choose is the one that truly supports us through our darkest moments.